In this advanced prototyping crash course, I'm going to show you how to create advanced prototypes using variables in Figma. Let's dive in. Before we start, you need to have two things. First, you need to grab a copy of this practice file that I prepared for you from the link in the description. And second, you need to have a paid Figma account because the features we are going to use in this video are only available to paid users. But even if you're not a paid user, you may still benefit from this video in case you want to upgrade to a paid plan later on. Alright, first we are going to start with the basics of advanced prototyping in Figma, and then we will put everything together and we will prototype this card page. The first thing we are going to create together is an interactive stepper. Okay, here we have a simple stepper. I'm just going to copy it, hit Ctrl+C or Command+C, hit A to create a frame here, just like this, and just paste it here. Alright, so as you know, as soon as we click on this plus button, this value should increase. And as soon as we click on this minus button, this value should decrease. So how can we achieve this behavior using variables and advanced prototyping? The first thing we need to create is a variable to be able to control the value of this stepper. Okay, so I'm just going to click somewhere here and head over to the local variables. And here, I'm just going to create another collection. Let's name it examples. And I'm going to create a new variable. What kind of variable do we need? Here we have a color, number, string, and Boolean variable. Well, for this example, we just need a number variable because here we only have a number. Therefore, I'm going to create a number variable and let's name it stepper value, and I'm going to set the default value to 0. All right. Now we need to link this variable to this particular text layer. So I'm just going to select this text. As you can see in the layers list, it's selected. Head over to the text section, and from here, I'm just going to click on this little icon. It says apply variable. I'm going to click on it, and as you can see, I have this stepper value variable. I'm going to connect it to this value. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that the default value is replaced with the previous value here. So we are sure that our variable is properly connected to this text layer. All right, so far so good. Now it's time to make it interactive. So here, I'm going to select this plus button and I'm going to head over to the prototype tab. And from here, I'm going to click on this plus button to create an interaction, just like this. The trigger is going to be on click, that's fine. And from here, I'm going to choose set variable, okay? So as soon as I do that, this local variables list pops up and it allows me to choose a variable, okay? Because we need to control the value of a variable here. It could be a color variable, it could be a number, a string variable, or even a Boolean variable that we will talk about later in this video. But for now, I'm just going to go to this examples collection, and from here, I'm going to select stepper value. Now this window pops up and it allows me to set a new value to this particular variable. Okay, here it says to write expression. What does it mean? Here I selected this particular variable and I'm going to change its value. I'm going to adjust it somehow. As soon as we click on this plus button, we need to take the stepper value, this default one, and increase it by 1. So here I'm going to type stepper value. We need to take the default value, and then it gives us a few options: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, right? So I'm going to choose addition. You can type plus manually as well. And here I'm going to type 1. So we take the stepper value and we increase it by 1. Okay, I'm going to hit enter and basically our first task is done. So now let's give it a try and see whether it works properly or not. Let's hit this plus button and see what happens. As you can see, it's working perfectly. But obviously, we cannot decrease this value because we didn't make this button interactive yet. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to select this minus button. I'm going to head over to the prototype tab and just add an interaction to it. And from here, we need to set the variable, this one, stepper value, to, guess what? Yes, you're right, stepper value -1 this time. So I'm going to choose stepper value here and just type -1, just like this. Now let's see whether it works or not. By the way, I can just select this frame and hit Shift and space to give it a try here, like this. And as you can see, it works perfectly. But here we run into an issue. Well, if I just keep hitting this minus button, look what happens. You see, we go into negatives, and that's not what we want. We just want to make sure that the lowest value we can get here is 0. So how can we fix that? Well, it's when conditional comes into play. Let me show you how it works. Here, if I select this minus button and if I go to interactions, I'm going to open up this drop-down menu, and as you can see right under this set variable, we have this conditional option. It allows us to create some conditions for our interactions. So I'm going to click on it to create a condition, and here we have this if and else statement. If you're not familiar with if and else statements, here is how it works. Imagine you want to tell Figma to make a decision, okay? And Figma can make this decision based on a set of conditions. It can be one condition, it can be two conditions or more. So basically, if-else statements work like this. If something is true, if a condition is met, then something should happen, okay? Here we have an action. If something is true, then Figma should run this action. Else, if none of these conditions are met, Figma should run this action. It's as simple as that. If something is true, do something. If not, do something else. Okay? So here we need to figure out how we should write this condition. As I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we don't go into negatives. Here is what we can write. I can say if stepper value, and here we have a few options: equal to, here is the sign, not equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, okay? So we can say if stepper value is not equal to 0, like this. If it's not 0, so here is our condition, then we need to add an action. Let's hit add action, then set variable, again, stepper value. Here we need to take the stepper value and just decrease it by 1, -1. And in this case, we don't need an else statement, okay? I'm gonna increase it like that, and now let's decrease it. And as you can see, it stops at 0, and that's exactly what we needed. All right, that was our first example. Now we need to move on to another example to show you another type of variable. Here, as you can see, I created a switch. I'm gonna select these two. I'm just gonna duplicate them and just move them out like this. Here we have two different states, on and off. I'm gonna select them both, and I'm gonna create a component set. So from here, I'm gonna click on create component set, just like that. Now let me head over to the design panel, and here, while this switch component set is selected, I'm gonna change its property to state. I'm gonna select this first variant and change its state value to false. And let's select this one and change its state value to true, because here we have a true and false, a toggle button basically. And then I'm gonna create a frame. Let's hit A and just draw a frame. And I'm gonna grab a copy of this switch and put it right here. And basically I'm gonna show you how you can control the visibility of any element using a switch and a Boolean variable. Okay, so here I have a switch. I'm gonna draw a rectangle here as well. Let me draw a rectangle like this. I can change its color as well to purple, like that. So here I have this rectangle, and I'm going to be able to hide it and unhide it using this switch. How can we do that? It's so simple. I'm going to create another local variable here, and this time I'm going to create a Boolean variable. A Boolean variable can only have a false or true value, okay? Let me call it switch, and I'm going to set the value to false, like that. Next, I'm gonna select this switch, and I'm gonna head over to this section, and right in front of its component property, this state property, you'll see this variable icon, okay? It allows me to assign a variable to this particular property. So I'm just gonna click on it, and here I'm gonna connect it to this switch variable that we just created. Just like that. This property, this state property, is linked to this Boolean variable that we just created. All right, so far so good. But are we done? Well, not yet. First, let me go ahead and select this variant, head over to prototype, and just connect it to this variant to change the state. And I'm going to change the animation to Smart Animate, like that. And I'm going to select this variant, connect it back to our initial variant, and the animation should be Smart Animate. So if I just select this frame, hit Shift and Spacebar, I can easily toggle it on or off. But nothing happens to this rectangle that I created. In order to control the visibility of this rectangle, we need to create another variable, okay? So I'm going to head over to Local Variables, and I'm just going to create another Boolean variable. And here, let's call it card is visible. Let's consider this rectangle a card, and I'm going to set its default value to false. That's fine. Now we need to connect this variable that we just created to this rectangle, to this card. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to head over to the layer section. And from here, I'm just going to right click on this eye icon. Okay. And it allows me to connect it to our card is visible variable. So let's connect it. And as soon as I do that, it's gone. Why? Because we set the default value of this card is visible variable to false. If I set it to true, it will be visible again, like this. Okay, but I'm going to keep it as is. All right, now it's time to see how we can control the visibility of this card using this toggle switch. Okay, so what you can do is select this variant, this default variant, head over to prototype, and from here, I'm going to hit this plus button to add another action, and I'm going to click on condition because I'm going to write a condition here, and I'm going to say if our switch variable is equal to false, then we need to add an action. I'm going to click on set variable. This time we need to set the card is visible variable to true, like this. Then I'm going to select this variant, this one, and just add another action, conditional. If switch is equal to false, then we need to add an action, set variable, card is visible is equal to false, like that. So now let's see whether it works or not. I'm just gonna select this frame, hit Shift and Spacebar, and as you can see now our toggle is turned off, and that's why we can't see our card. If I just turn it on, there we go. Here is our card, and we can simply control its visibility using this toggle button, just like that. All right, now that you're familiar with the basics of advanced prototyping using variables, let's go ahead and create a page loader together. It's gonna be so interesting. So I'm just gonna hit A on my keyboard to draw a frame like that. And for a page loader, what we need is two text layers. Okay, so I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, left click to create a text layer, and I'm going to type 0. This is going to be our initial value of our page loader. I'm going to duplicate it, hit Control D or Command D, move it to the right side, and I'm just going to type a percentage sign like that. Now I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A to add auto layout to them. Let me align it to the center as well. Okay, perfect. So what should we achieve here? Basically, as soon as we preview this page, this value should start increasing from 0 all the way to 100%. Okay, the way we can do that is like this. I'm just going to select this 0 value. Let me just cut it, hit Control X or Command X, and just paste it somewhere here. Okay, it's right there. I can change its color. And I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, select these two, and just create a component set, just like that, to get two variants. I'm going to select this second one and change its property value to 2. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to select this one and set it to 1. Now I'm going to select this first one and just head over to prototype and just connect it to this second one. The trigger here is so important. It shouldn't be set to on click. It should be set to after delay, and the delay is going to be 1 millisecond, okay? Here, I'm going to set the animation to instant. We don't need the smart animate. And we also need to add another action here, but we cannot do that because we didn't create a variable for this value yet, okay? So we are going to do that in a second. Before we do that, let me select the second one and just connect it back to this first variant. Change the trigger to after delay, and the delay is gonna be 1 millisecond, just like that. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and create a local variable for this value. Let's create a number variable, and I'm gonna call it loader value. And the default value is gonna be 0. Now I'm gonna select these two text layers. Make sure to select these two text layers, not these two variants. It's so important. Select the text layers inside these two variants. Head over to the text section and just click on this little icon and connect these texts to this loader value, just like that. All right, now I'm gonna select this one variant, head over to prototype, and I'm just gonna open up this interaction that we just created, and I'm gonna add another action to it. I'm gonna write a condition. I'm gonna say if our loader value is less than 100, then take our loader value and just increase it by something, maybe 3, 4, 2, whatever. So here, I'm gonna take our loader value. If our loader value is less than 100, like this, then add an action, set variable, again, loader value to loader value plus, I'm gonna type 3 in this case. I'm just gonna go ahead and just drag and drop a copy of this 0 component. Let me change its color to black, like this. And we can just put it inside our auto layout. But for now, let's just preview it quickly. Okay, so it works, but not properly. Here, as you can see, we went to 102. So it didn't stop at 100. That's because of this value we chose, number 3. Here, as you can see, if I just open up this condition, I chose number 3. If I change it to 2, it will be solved for sure. Let me prove that to you. But we can write a better condition. I'm gonna select it, and I'm just gonna change it back to 3. Okay, and then I'm gonna write an else statement to say that if the value is higher than 100, then set the value to 100%. So if it goes above 100, Figma will set it to 100. So basically we'll limit that number to 100. So let's add an action here, and let's say set variable, and I'm gonna set loader value to 100, like this. So once again, if the loader value is less than 100, then it will increase it by 3, else, if it's something else, like 101, 105, anything, depending on this number, Figma will set this value to 100. All right, now let's see whether it works or not. I'm just gonna preview it once again, and there we go. Now it works perfectly. Great, now let's move on to our last example, which is this cart page. So here we have many things to do. Basically what we are gonna create is a fully interactive cart page. So here, as you can see, we have a stepper. Here we have the price for this product. Here we have price for 1 unit. We have the quantity, and we have the total value. But right now they are static. We want to make them dynamic. If I just preview it like this, and I try to increase the quantity, I cannot do that. You know how to make this stepper interactive because we already talked about it. But we also want to change these values based on the quantity, okay? So if I increase the quantity to 2, we need to change the quantity here to 2, and the total value should be increased, okay? To do that, the way I designed this page is like this. I separated this $sign from the value. Here, as you can see, I have this price frame, and inside I have 2 text layers. One for the $sign, the other one for the price. That's so important because the only thing we want to change dynamically is the price, not this $sign, okay? And the same thing applies to this and this for the total. All right, first we need to define our variables. So let's go to local variables, and I'm going to create a new collection here. Let's create a collection and just call it cart. We need 1 variable for our price, 1 for the quantity, and 1 for the total value. So here, let's create a number variable, and I'm going to call it price. And I'm going to set the default value to $2.99. Let's create another variable. This one is going to be quantity, and the default value is going to be 1. And I'm going to create one more variable, and it's going to be total. And the default value is going to be 299 for now. Okay, now let's go ahead and connect our elements to these variables. So I'm going to start with these two elements. I'm going to select this, hold down the Control or Command key on your keyboard and just left click here. Now I'm going to hold down Shift and Control key on my keyboard and click on this one as well, because we need to connect these two text layers to the same variable. Here we have price for one, and here we have the price of this product. So while both of them are selected, I'm just going to head over to the text section, and from here, I'm just going to connect it to price. Now, I'm going to select this stepper value, hold down the Shift key and Control key, select this quantity as well, and connect these two to our quantity variable. And finally, I'm going to select this total text and just connect it to our total variable. All right, our elements are perfectly connected to their variables. Now it's time to make it interactive. So I'm going to select this plus button here. I'm going to head over to prototype, and you know what to do. We just need to create an interaction. The trigger should be on click. This time I'm going to create a conditional for this. But why? Here we didn't create a conditional for this one. As you can see, we used set variable. Here we said just increase the stepper value by 1. But this time, for this example, I'm going to create a condition to say, all right, if the quantity is less than a specific value, let's say if it's less than 20, then increase it. Because this time I'm going to limit the number of products that the user can order. You can adjust it however you want, but I'm just going to show you the possibilities here. I'm going to select it and just create a conditional. I'm going to say if quantity is less than, let's say 20, okay? Then add an action, set variable quantity to quantity plus 1. So let's see whether it works or not. I'm just going to select this frame, preview it. I'm going to increase it just like that. And as you can see, these two text layers are connected to the same variable, okay? And I can increase it until 20. So basically this is our maximum number, okay? Now let's go ahead and make this minus interactive as well. You know what to do. I'm just gonna select it, create an interaction, this time conditional. If quantity is not equal to 0, then add an action, set variable quantity to quantity minus 1. Just like this. And let's preview it once again. So here, as you can see, we can go to 0 and not to the negatives. Perfect. Now it's time to somehow update this total value as well. How can we do that? Well, here I'm going to click on this conditional for the plus button. I'm going to hit this plus button and I'm going to click on set variable. Here I'm going to set total to quantity times price. So here we first update the quantity, then we update the total. And when it comes to creating conditions, the order of your conditions matters a lot because Figma will go through them one by one from top to bottom. That's so important. Keep that in mind. So let's preview it once again. Here we have 1. The total is 299. I'm going to increase it. Just like this, the quantity has been updated in addition to the total value. Like that. But here, when I decrease it, nothing changed because we need to do the same thing here for this minus button. So I'm going to create another action, set variable, and it should be total. We need to set the total variable to quantity times price, just like that. Now it should work perfectly. All right, so far so good. The top part is done. Now we are going to move on to the bottom part, okay? Here we have this go to checkout button, which is active by default here. And I created this terms and conditions checkbox, which doesn't make sense for the cart page. We usually put it on the checkout page, but I just wanted to show you an example here. That's why I put it on the cart page. I'm gonna make this go to checkout button inactive by default. And as soon as the user checks this checkbox, then it will be active. How can we do that? So here I have these two checkboxes. I'm gonna select them both. Let me duplicate them and move them right here. While they are selected, I'm gonna create a component set to create two variants. I'm gonna select this checkbox component set and change its property name to state. I'm gonna select this first variant and change its state to, you could change it to unchecked and change this one to checked. That's fine, it would work, but since I'm gonna connect this state property to a Boolean variable, I prefer to use false and true values. Okay, so I'm gonna set this one to false, select this one, and set it to true. Okay, this way, when I create an instance of this checkbox like this, I'll get this switch here, and I can easily connect it to a Boolean variable. Now here I have two different states of this go to checkout button. I have the enabled state and a disabled state. So I'm just gonna select these two, create a component set like that, select this component set, change the property here to state. I'm gonna select this disabled variant and change its state to disabled. I can change it to false and true again, but I'm going to show you another way of doing that so that you know both ways. It's so important. This time I use disabled, and here I'm going to use enabled. And when I go ahead and create an instance of this CTA button, here I'll get these two options. I don't have a toggle. Therefore, I cannot connect a Boolean variable to this property. But if we are not able to connect a Boolean variable to this property, how are we going to change the state easily? I'm going to show you how. I'm going to copy this instance that I created, hit Ctrl+C or Command+C, select this button, right click on it, and just click on paste to replace. Okay, I just replaced my button with an instance of this component that we just created, as you can see. I also want to create an instance of this checkbox that we just created, copy it, hit Ctrl+C or Command+C, select this checkbox, right click on it, and hit paste to replace. And this part is so important. We need to go ahead and create two local variables. I'm going to create a Boolean variable for this checkbox. Let's create a Boolean variable, and I'm going to call it TNC, terms and conditions. By default, it should be set to false, but I also want to create a string variable. Okay, we haven't created a string variable so far. I'm going to call it CTA, and the value, the default value, is going to be disabled. The spelling is so important. You need to use the exact same word that you used for these variants. Okay, here I used disabled. Here I used disabled as well. It's very, very important. Okay, otherwise it wouldn't work. All right, we've created our variables. Now let's connect them. Should we connect our variables to our variants here? Well, no, because we cannot do that. Instead, we need to connect our variables to the instances of our components, to these instances. How can we do that? I'm going to start with this checkbox. I'm going to select this instance of the checkbox we created, head over to this state property, just click on this little icon and assign this TNC variable, this TNC Boolean variable to this checkbox, just like this. But what about this button? I'm going to select this instance of our button, our CTA component, head over to the state and just connect it to our string variable, to this CTA variable that we created. And here, as you can see, the default value is disabled. So when we connect it to this state property, it figures out which state, which variant we need to use based on the value of this variable. So as soon as I connect this variable to this state property, as you can see, now our button is disabled. I know it may sound confusing, but if you just practice a little bit, you'll figure it out. Alright, our variables are connected, but if I preview this page and I try to interact with this checkbox, look what happens. Nothing, because we didn't make it interactive. Here, I'm going to select this false variant, head over to prototype, connect it to this true variant, and I'm going to select this one, connect it back to our false variant. So if I preview it now, as you can see, I can check and uncheck it. But as soon as I check this check mark, nothing happens to this go to checkout button. So let's fix that. I'm going to select this variant here, the false one. And here I'm going to add a conditional. Basically, we need to say if this checkbox is checked, then change the state of this button from disabled to enabled. Okay, as simple as that. So here I'm going to say if TNC variable, this Boolean variable, is equal to true, then add an action, set variable. This time we need to use our string variable. Here we have this CTA variable. We need to change the value of this string variable to enabled. But here is an important point. When you want to change the value of a string variable, you need to type quotation marks, and then inside these quotation marks, you need to type your new value, enabled. And now I'm going to select this one, the checked variant, and just write a condition. Here, let's say if TNC variable is equal to false, then we need to set our string variable value, CTA, to quotation marks disabled, just like this. And now let's give it a try and see whether it works or not. There we go. As soon as I check this, Figma changes the state of this button from disabled to enabled. And let me uncheck it. It works perfectly. If you want to learn how to make your design responsive using Figma variables, make sure to check out this video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more design tutorials. Have a great day and see you next time.